Morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to the drip irrigation class. My name is Mark Reinhardt. I am the Water System and Conservation Manager for the City of San Bruno. I work closely with BAWSCA and all the conservation programs for the city. For people that don't know about BAWSCA, BAWSCA is a Bay Water and Supply and Conservation Agency. We represent 26 agencies, including city water districts and water companies throughout the San Francisco regional water system. BAWSCA members agencies provide water to about 1.7 million people and 30,000 businesses and communities through Alameda, Santa Clara, and San Mateo counties. BAWSCA's goal is, of course, a high-quality supply of water at a fair price. Class objectives for today are it's about outdoor water use represents the single largest untapped opportunity for conservation. And we can achieve that by reduction through the use of water-efficient plants and innovative techniques like today. So Long Begun, San Bruno is one of the cities that's involved with Long Begun. Long Begun consists of, it's a program where if you have 200 square feet of lawn, and you convert your lawn into drip irrigation, you can get a rebate up to $300. It's 50 cents per square foot rebate. And in addition, we have we have 5 programs in San Bruno. We have the high efficiency toilet program, we have the washing machine program, the landscape audit program, Earth to Page, which is a vaudeville act. It educates all the kids in all the schools, middle schools throughout San Bruno, which is very good program, very successful, and Long Begun. That's it. With that, I'd like to introduce Lori Palmquist. Lori has been a landscape professional for more than 20 years, specializing in irrigation for the past 12. She learned most of what she knows by hands-on experience. She currently teaches landscape professionals and homeowners about how to achieve water efficiency in the landscape. When she's not teaching, she is consulting and designing irrigation systems. Lori keeps up on the latest irrigation technology so that she can teach others how best to design the systems provide optimum water efficiency. So I have handouts out there for the 5 programs if you guys want to know a little bit more about it. You can also go on San Bruno's website. We have a new water website. If you go to the Public Works, Public Services drop-down, you go to water, it'll go right to the site. It has all of the programs on there and all the ways to save water. A lot of tips on there. We just renovated it like 3 months ago. So if you go online, you get all the information. All the information of all the programs are on there too. And there's a tab you just click on, and it goes to BAWSCA, and it tells you all the information you need to know about all the programs. So with that, I hope you have a very fun day today out there doing the irrigation. So yeah, next week will be the planning, and then they'll have the mulch and stuff. Everything's be set up for everybody that wants to come. So hopefully everybody's in this class shows up to the next class.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Should say good morning, San Bruno. So this is the last in my series of workshops that I'm giving for BAWSCA, the irrigation workshops. And actually, this is the one I'm the most excited about. This is really a groundbreaking, pun intended, workshop here, where the city of San Bruno has decided to do this demonstration garden / water conservation demonstration. And so what they did was they had just solid turf grass out there in front of the fire department. And I don't know how many of you walked by there on the way to come in here, but they pulled out the turf grass. And we have a wonderful landscape architect who made a landscape plan using native plants, low water use plants, of course. And our objective today is to irrigate it. Now this is it's a really special kind of situation, because as a contractor, when I irrigate plants, I come in after the plants are in the ground. But in this case, because we knew we were going to have a whole bunch of folks tromping around in there, we decided to put in the irrigation first, the drip tubing first, and then next Saturday they're coming and they're planting the plants in the ground. And so it's we've got a compromise here, because for one thing, we're just going to have flags where the plants go. So we don't get to interact with the plants, but we also don't get to tromp all over them either. So we're going to have flags where the plants go, and we will be able to run all of our drip tubing, and we're actually going to leave the emitters off of these plants, because we want, when you all come back next Saturday to plant these plants, we want the system to be fairly flexible, so that you can move it away or move it to the plant, and then once the plants are in, then we get the tubing in exactly where it's supposed to go, and then we put the emitters in. So if we were to try to guess today exactly where that plant would be planted, it may not work. It may not work. So we're not going to punch the emitters in there. So I have a few slides. I'm going to give you some visuals on what we're going to do today. And Laura, if you could please count the number of people, and you know how many groups we're going to have. If you could count the number of people so that we can start strategizing for our outdoor portion, that would be great. We're probably going to be indoors for about another maybe half an hour, and then we'll go outside and do our business, and then we'll come back in and learn more about what we did out there. Okay, so I'm going to see if this works sort of like a remote. Hey, yay, okay. So this is the actual planting design that Xirri Osaka did, and this shows the plants. What we do when we do a planting design is we draw the plants in at their mature sizes. Okay, we want to know how big that plant is going to get at its mature size. So we are, oh, Laura, do you have the pointer, the laser pointer? We're actually going to be going to point out a few things to them.
Don't sneeze, the dog leaves.
Okay. Yeah. Laura and I have been talking about this dog and pony show that we give, and we've got the dog now. We're looking for the pony to appear. Okay, so the firehouse is right here, the building, the actual building itself. This bed is an existing bed that had plants in it already, and we're just leaving them there. Yes, there are rhodies and azaleas and things in there that are not native, but we're leaving that as it is for now. We will be working on this lower part here. And this is, the plants have been drawn in at their mature sizes. When she did this landscape plan, this is a 2-scale plan. It doesn't look to scale up here, but it's a 2-scale plan. All right, 2-scale, the TO, not TWO. All right, so now this is, I came in and I did an irrigation design on top of her plan. So see all these squiggly lines down here? That's what we're going to be doing today. We'll be putting in all of those squiggly lines. And then, now what I've done is I've gotten rid of all the other stuff, and I faded the plants out, faded them back, and because this is what we're really dealing with, is this here. So it was turf grass before. These are the sprinkler locations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sprinkler locations. There are a couple of strategies for converting sprinklers to drip. The strategy that we're employing on this is that we're capping all of the sprinklers except for 2. And the reason we're capping all but 2 is because this is a concrete pathway in between these. This is all one zone, okay? One valve zone. When I say zone or valve zone, what I mean is these are irrigation valves. One zone, in this case, this would be my sprinkler zone. This would be my drip zone. Drip because I have a filter and a pressure regulator on it, and sprinkler because I only have a pressure regulator on it. And we'll be talking later when we come in about the importance of of these components here. When we want to go from sprinklers to drip, we need to filter it and pressure regulate it. All right, so those are two events that need to happen to take it from sprinklers to drip. All right, so the reason we're converting in two places is because we have this concrete pathway in between here, and we would just like to have a couple of connection points, our actual connection points. We're leaving all of the PVC underground. Everything that was there before feeding the sprinklers is staying there. So we're using that. The valves are here. This little symbol is the symbol for a valve. These little guys here are valves. They're symbols for this thing, these things. And in this case, I believe they're underground. They're in an underground box. These are above ground valves. These happen to be underground. One of those valves waters this top area, so we won't be doing anything there. We'll be working down here. So then this strategy is to convert two sprinkler heads or locations to drip. So what we're going to do is convert these two spots right here. This is one of the strategies. There are two strategies. We have them both here today. This strategy, and you have a handout for this as well, looks like a sprinkler. And it's not a sprinkler. It actually has a filter and a pressure regulator inside of it. So when we convert those that used to be sprinklers, you screw this on, and then you run your drip tubing directly out of that. So we will be running our drip tubing out of two locations out there. And then this one it basically does the same thing, but it doesn't look like a sprinkler head. It's this guy here. So when I held this up for you, and I showed that there was a filter and a pressure regulator, what we got to convert this one today was this gadget, which is both of those things in one. It actually is a filter and a pressure regulator. This is made by Rainbird. This is the filter part. There's a little filter inside here that you just pull out and flush, maybe once a year, something like that. And then this little white dot that you see here, that's actually the pressure regulator. Because these systems generally are starting at least 60 psi. When I say psi, that's pounds per square inch. This is how we measure the pressure of water. We measure it in pounds per square inch. And I like to design my drip systems to be 30 psi. I think we have, when I measured the one out there at the fire station, I think it was 60. So we definitely need to bring it down. Why? Because the components will blow apart if they're at a higher pressure. All right. Sparse plantings. We're calling this out there sparse plantings. The sparse plantings is the photo on the left, and that's what we have in this situation. The way we measure how much water we give sparse plantings is by gallons. We measure it in gallons. So then we look at the number of emitters that we have on there. So the emitters that we would be using today, if we were actually punching the emitters into the tubing, would be 0.5 gallons per hour. Those are the emitters we'll be using today. And so we're putting one emitter on each side of the plant. So then that is 1 gallon per hour for each plant. And then we know if we run the system for 1 hour, that's 1 gallon. Okay, so that's how we know how much water, thank you, Laura. That's how we know how much water to give the plants. And we'll be covering when we come back in how much, when, why, and all of those particulars. This is the strategy where you can actually, like I said, this looks like a sprinkler, and when you buy these, it just comes with this part, that looks like a sprinkler head. Just looks like this. And then if you open it up, it's got the actual filter and pressure regulator inside. This is a Rainbird product as well. So if you have Rainbird sprinklers in the area that you would like to convert to drip, you can actually leave those in the ground. You don't have to pull them out and cap them like we did over here at the fire department. They actually pulled those out and they capped the little nipples that were underground. If you have Rainbird sprinklers, this actually is usually not already popped up. This is for show and tell purposes. My hands are the soil. So usually all you can see is just this very top of your sprinkler. What you can do if you have Rainbird sprinklers and you would like to use this Retrofit product is you can just unscrew the top, pull out the innards, and then screw it on this guy. And now you've got your drip system, basically. And then you would cap off everything else. Yes, ma'am?
When I bought my house in 1987, a friend of mine who does this kind of work did for both yards, did a whole sprinkler system.
Yes.
And it worked fine for a couple of years, and then I think it just got clogged. And so I've pulled everything out. Do these have to stay above ground? You're demonstrating your hands with the soil.
Right. Right. They don't have to stay above ground. In fact, you could bury this if you wanted. It could be like this, on its side and buried. But what I like to do is I like to have access to it because I'm doing this. It's at soil level. I want to be able to have access to it to be able to flush out this filter now and then. And then if it's not turf grass, if it's not a lawn, it's easy to just dig the soil out around it. You can just leave it in as a sprinkler. Dig the soil out just a little bit around it so that when you open it up, it doesn't, the mud doesn't gush back in there.
So I'm sure that's probably
Right.
what happened.
Yeah, and any time you open up an irrigation system that is already in place, whether it be sprinklers or drip, you should always make sure that there is no way that the soil that's around any of this gets inside either the sprinklers, the PVC pipes, the tubing, anything, okay? We want to keep those completely clean. It's virtually impossible to keep it completely clean. So what we do is anytime we do work on any kind of irrigation system is we flush the whole thing before we actually get it up and running because we want to get all of that debris out of there. It's really difficult to keep all debris out of the whole system. Yes?
Do you use anti-siphon devices in your system?
Yes, and that's what these are. How many of you have existing irrigation systems already? Okay. Probably most of you have this type of valve. Some of you may have the type of valve that's underground in a box. Okay. The danger of not flushing a system when you open it up in any way, if the debris gets in there and you don't flush it out, what happens is you can run the system and then when it shuts off, that debris will get sucked back into the valve and make it so that it will not close, it will not seal. This has what we call a diaphragm in it. And if any of the debris comes back up and gets stuck in this diaphragm, it won't seal and close. The valve won't close. That is a very, very common thing. Yes?
Could you say more about what you mean when you say flush the system?
Yeah, flushing the system. We will actually be covering that because we'll be putting, when we put in the tubing out there, we'll be putting in flush points, what we call flush points. And those are just places that you open up and then you turn your system on so that the water just gushes out. And then what that does is it flushes everything out. The way that we do it with sprinklers, it's a little tougher to flush a sprinkler system. The way that we need to do it with sprinklers is that we have to pull up This has an extension on it. We take the nozzles off to flush it because a nozzle will not let dirt pass by it, okay? That's pretty obvious. The drip systems and spray systems are made to emit very small amounts of water. In the case of drip, it's drops of water. In the case of sprinkler systems, it's an even spray of drops coming out. The nozzles for the sprinklers and the drip systems, they really won't allow debris or dirt to pass through. So if we want to do sprinklers, flush a sprinkler system, what we do is this. I actually have an extension on this for show and tell purposes, but for those of you who have sprinklers, it probably looks more like this. So that your sprinkler is flat in the ground and you can just see this little nub of something sitting there. So if you wanted to flush this, what you would need to do is pull this up. Now these have very strong springs on them. And then I have a tool that I use just to hold it in place. It's a little thing that I get at Home Depot or at Orchard Supply. It's, I'll show you outside when we have the tools out there, and it holds this up. So then I unscrew my nozzle and I turn the sprinklers on. That's how you flush that out. Okay? And you can take them all off at one time. It won't leave you with very much pressure to truly flush. Usually what I'll do is I'll flush a few at a time. Yeah, because if you just take all of the nozzles off, chances are the water won't come out correctly and really flush. You want to see basically a geyser come out of here. Okay, that's how you flush, is to really go through there with power. And the way you go through with power is to just take a few of these off at a time. But the reason you have, now imagine if you didn't do this and hold it up, you take off your nozzle and you flush it, and the soil levels here, when it goes back down in there, the soil is just going to go right in there. This really creates a suction, actually. It'll just suck the water. Any water that's sitting around in here will get sucked back in, as well as soil particles. And we want to keep soil particles out of our valves. Okay.
What is the name of the tool?
The tool, you know, it actually doesn't have a name, but if you go to the sprinkler area at either Orchard Supply or Home Depot, they actually do not have these tools at the professional irrigation stores, which I'm not sure why that is. Well, actually, I am pretty sure why that is. The spring comes off the tool and you lose it easily. And I think they just got tired of people returning it. So it's just, well, I'll show you out there what it is. It's got green handles. Very, very handy tool.
You could probably use a vice grip, you know,
Absolutely.
adjustable, and
Vice
it
grip
works
is
just as good.
perfect. Yeah, vice grip is perfect. You just want to be careful that you don't smash this. Yeah, yeah. So you could use a vice grip. I've tried using strong rubber bands. You might be able to get strong rubber band to hold it up, depending on how strong the pop-up spring is. So then the point is, out there we have sparse plantings. So when we're talking sparse plantings, then what we want to do is we're measuring the water in gallons. These plants that are going in next week, they're low water use plants. They are coming in 1 gallon containers, this size. All of the plants will be in 1 gallon containers. It's about 40 plants that will be going in out there. And so what we're going to do, well, we're not going to physically do it because we want them to have the flexibility of moving the tubing around, is there will end up being 1 emitter on either side of the plant. So we've got 2 emitters for each plant. The reason for that is we really want the root growth to be even. We want it to go out evenly. If we just put 1 emitter at the base of the plant, then the water tends to spread on that side, and the roots are going for the water. So the roots will go that way, and so will the growth. So then you've got a one-sided, lopsided plant. if you just put an emitter on one side of the plant. Yes, sir?
Yeah, the 2 emitters per plant when you first put them in, and they're all 1 gallon plants, seems to make sense.
Uh-huh.
But I noticed in the drawing that some of the plants get bigger. Are you going to adjust the number of emitters as the plants do?
Exactly, that's exactly it. So drip systems need to grow with the plants. Now these emitters, I think I've got a slide on this. Well, I'll continue because a slide a little bit further on I show the actual, we call it a wetting pattern for emitters. One of these 0.5 gallon per hour emitters, if it's left on for 1 hour, 45 minutes to an hour in clay soil. How many of you have clay soil? Okay. Anybody with sandy soil here? Oh, wow, there are a few. Okay. Okay. So clay soil, we recommend using this, 0.5. Sandy soil, use the bigger emitters, the bigger denominations of emitters. And so sandy soil, you would want to use either 1.0 gallons per hour or 2.0 gallons per hour. These are sandy. Sand, and this is clay. And this is also clay loam. Clay or clay loam. Clay loam meaning soil that you've added amendments and organic material, compost, and things to. All right. So sparse plantings, this is an example of sparse plantings. This is a native garden that the plants were put in 4-inch. They started out 4-inch or 1 gallon containers. And I believe this garden was about 4 years old when this photo was taken. This is on the native plant tour in El Cerrito. They were on the native plant tour for the past 3 years. Okay, so that is sparse plantings. Now this looks very much like the design that you have, which is the design that we are going by, is that 2 things that we want to be sure of. We want to make sure that there is an emitter on each side of the plant, and it's a really good idea to try to have a closed loop system. Okay, a closed loop system. This helps in pressure, this helps in flow. We want to try to have a closed loop. In this drawing, you can see that it's closed. In our design for today, it is closed. Same thing. All right. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier about wetted area. These in clay soil, 0.5 gallons per hour. The diameter of that wetted area will go out 3 to 3.5 feet. All right, so we're talking about like this. When that smallest emitter is on for 45 minutes to an hour, it'll go out about this far. Now, oftentimes what happens is people will turn it on and they'll turn it on for that amount of time, and they'll say, boy, they'll see circles like this and say it is not going out to 3.5 feet. But the first thing that acts on water when it comes out of anything is what? Gravity. That's what I was looking for, is gravity. So first the water goes down, and then once it gets into the soil actually wicks it outwards. We call it capillary action. The soil wicks it out. So it goes down and then it goes out. Yes?
If you left the on the clay, if you left it on for 2 hours, would it then go out 5.7 feet? Or do you have to change your emitters?
Well, that's a good question. I bet it would go out 5 to 7 feet, because this is about, it's about the run time, okay? So as I said earlier, if we have 1 gallon per hour total in our emitters, then we run it for an hour and it does this. Each emitter does 3 to 3.5 feet. So then the 1 gallon per hour emitter, if twice as much water comes out, then it should go out twice as far. And that tends to follow. As you can see, these numbers are not exactly double when you go up, when you double the amount of flow, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. All right, let's see here what we've got. Okay. So a general rule of thumb is that we establish our base plant in this. In one zone, we have one valve zone. We establish our base plant, and we do it by water use. This garden that we're doing today is all low water use plants, so every plant is our base plant, basically. It's all low water use, so we're giving everybody the same amount of emitters. Let's say we had a few roses in there, and they are moderate water use plants. The moderate water use plants need twice as much water as the low ones do. So we would put twice as many emitters. Okay? It follows that way. And then the high water use plants use 4 times the amount of water that the low ones do. For this garden today, it's all low, no problem. For your gardens, you probably have quite a different situation. It's not all low, most likely. Yes, sir?
So then should I put my potted plants on a separate zone?
That is, yes, well that is, we'll be talking about hydrozones later. And what hydrozone means is that the ultimate situation is to, on any given zone, one valve zone, that we group plants together that have similar water needs. Okay, similar water needs. And so when you talk about your plants that are in pots, those do not have similar water needs to the plants that are in the ground. So the best case scenario, if you can do it, is to have a whole separate zone dedicated to your potted plants. The water needs being very different because the pots dry out much more quickly, and we usually water those every day in the summer. Okay, so if you can, you really should separate out the pots. They have a very different water need than the plants in the ground. Yeah. Okay. And then I have a note in the bottom. It's probably hard to read, but it says that it's preferable not to mix 3 water needs in one zone. So that means mixing low water use plants, moderate water use plants, and high water use plants in one zone. Now in the real world, we see this, we go to the nursery and we see all these beautiful plants and we buy what we want to have in our garden and we plant them. And historically, there has not been attention given to the water use of the plant. It's been really generic. This plant, like the Sunset Western Garden book, it says this plant is, what's the terminology they use? They say moderate watering or regular watering, frequent watering. It's really general. And that's because the plants can be sold in Chico or they can be sold in Los Angeles. They can go anywhere. So when we talk about low water use plants, we're zooming in on this area, San Bruno, California, and we're saying that these plants that we're planting today are low water use plants in San Bruno, California. All right? And I will be referring you to a resource today that actually has broken California down into 6 zones. And it's a list, you can find it online, that says in San Bruno, California, this plant is this water use. In Sacramento, California, this plant is this water use. So all of you sitting here, you probably did not plant your gardens. Maybe you inherited your gardens, maybe you planted them, but most likely attention was not given to planting a low water use garden or a moderate water use garden. So then what we do is we determine what we have. Say I've got some lavenders, I've got some roses, I may even have a redwood out in the corner of the yard. If I have lavender, roses, and redwood on one zone, that's low, moderate, and high in one zone. And if you have to water those in one zone, the beauty of drip systems is that you can tailor the amount of water to each plant. You can address each plant. Sprinklers water gardens and they water lawns. Drip waters plants. Okay? This is why we're so excited about drip. For one thing, you're not blasting the water out and watering 100% of the soil. Up come the weeds. And you're not saying, I'm sorry, even though you want very little water, I'm just putting it out at one rate. With sprinklers, you have to gear your system to the highest water need plant. And then all those other guys that don't want much water, they have to take it whether they like it or not. Okay? That's the beauty of drip. We can tailor it to each plant. Now in this case today, we would be putting in 2 0.5 emitters at each plant because we know that these plants are low water use plants. If we had a few roses out there, we would be putting in 2 1-gallon emitters. And say if we put in a couple of redwoods too, we would be putting in 2 2-gallon emitters. So in other words, what we're doing is establishing our lowest water need plant as our base plant. And then we drive the rest of it based on this base plant. Low water need, 1 gallon per hour. Moderate water need, 2 gallons per hour. High water need, 4 gallons per hour. That way, we have a system, we have established parity in the system, and we run it for a certain amount of time. Everybody gets the amount of water they need. Okay.
You know, I have weeds
Yes.
that grow along the edge of my property that I don't water at all.
Uh-huh.
I thought the whole idea with native plants was to find things that you didn't need to water that could just survive in our climate without me having to supplement them with water.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Are there any of those on
Okay.
the list that like I could just plant and just maybe give them some starter water
Right.
and then just sort of just not water them at all?
Okay, well there is a bit of a misconception about native plants. Native plants, for the most, are plants that are adapted to California weather conditions. Wet winters, dry summers. Mediterranean plants are also adapted to those conditions. Australian plants, and any place in the world that has a Mediterranean climate is adapted to those conditions. Some of our native plants grow by creek sides, right? We have a lot of ferns. We have some trees that really want to have their feet wet all the time. We have native plants that grow in moister environments. Our native dogwoods, the redwood can be classified as that, even though it doesn't grow by a creek side. The redwoods on the California coast water themselves in the summer. They water themselves. The fog collects and it drops down as water. Anybody who's done any hiking in the regional parks in the summer in the Bay Area knows that redwoods water themselves. That's how they have adapted to the dry summers, even though they're high water use plants. So it's a little bit of a misnomer that native plants, once they're established, don't need any water. Okay? They are adapted to dry summers. There are plants that will just appear in your sidewalk cracks or anywhere else without water because the conditions are perfect for them. Some plants don't even care. They'll grow out of buildings, they'll grow out of sidewalk cracks. They'll just say, hey, here I am. A seed lands there and it just sprouts because it can do that. Okay, so what we do to help deny those weeds is tailor our drip system so that we're watering the plants themselves and not 100% of the garden, the soil, and we put down mulch. So another thing about that I was mentioning earlier, and somebody actually asked the question, as the plant gets bigger, it needs more water, right? Yes. So that's why we put in a very loose grid. And right now we'll have an emitter on each side of the plant. But when that plant gets bigger and its canopy is further out, the tubing is actually there. It doesn't have emitters in it, but we can come along later and we can pop in a tube, pop in an emitter out there where the plant is growing. Because what happens with plants is when you first plant them, so say I'm the plant. I guess since my name's Lori, I would be a laurel. So I'm a 1-gallon laurel. And planted me, and then right off, you need to get an emitter pretty close in there. And this is one thing that is a good point for new gardens if you plant new plants. The soil that plant comes in is really cushy stuff, isn't it? It's potting soil. Potting soil is well-draining soil. It's really cushy stuff. It doesn't resemble in the least what you're putting it into, your garden, right? You've got this clay soil, maybe you have clay loam. It's coming in this really cushy stuff. Water does not like to travel across what we call soil interfaces. So we've got this cushy soil right here, and out here we've got clay soil, maybe clay loam. If we put an emitter out here when we plant, the water is not going to want to come to this cushy soil because it's got an interface. It's saying, well, the soil's different. So what has to happen is that this soil out here has to become saturated. It has to get filled up, and then it will reach across and enter into the other soil. So what we have to do, what our objective is to get one emitter. This is why we say 2 emitters for each plant in a brand new garden. One emitter has to go in that cushy soil. Okay? One emitter has to go in that cushy soil, because if they just put the emitters out here, those brand new roots right here may not get water. Okay? Because the water doesn't really want to travel across to a different kind of soil. Okay, so I'm like this. I was just planted. This is my canopy. In a year, I'm like this. Now the roots that were drinking in here, they call them feeder roots. When I was first planted, are now woody roots. Now this is woody plants that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about grasses. Okay, woody plants. These are woody now. They are not drinking. All right? So this emitter that we put into the actual potting soil when we planted the plant, it's really not doing anything. I mean, it's watering, but the plant's not drinking it. It won't drink through woody roots. So when we come along later, we pull that out. And that's why we're going to have flexible tubing here. We're going to make sure that we have nice curves around so we can move things around at a later date. And by the way, we leave everything right on top of the soil. We don't bury anything. We leave it on top and we cover it with mulch. Okay? Okay, I already explained this about low water use. If we have a moderate water use plant, then we do twice the water. Yes, sir?
So when you move the emitters out and you have the original emitter in there, do you pop that one out and cap it, or do you leave it in there, or how do you handle that?
I prefer to just take the whole tube and move it out. Yeah, and if you do your grid, I use the word grid very loosely. When you say grid, it implies something very hard and structural. We do loose grids so that we can just pull it out. And there will be other plants too. We might impact other plants. If I pull this away from this lavender that's here, I might, so that I can accommodate its growth pattern and where its roots are, I might be pulling it away from another plant too. So we just keep an eye on the impact that we're having, and you can always put in another emitter somewhere. Just have a bag of emitters and put another in.
But you could cap it. Is there a tool, a product that you could
Yes.
pull the emitter out and put a thing?
It's called a goof plug. Yes, you can
goose
pull
plug?
out goof. G-O-O-F.
It's good.
Yes, they call it a goof plug. I don't like to do that because anytime you pull an emitter out of this polyethylene tubing, supposedly you can put a plug in and it'll plug it. They don't always plug it that well. And it's just one place where you can have a leak happen. Say somebody comes along later and steps on that, or a deer steps on it, or your dog steps on it. The plug could actually break off, and then you've got a geyser and you've got something you have to fix. So what I really try not to do is pull out emitters. Okay, yes?
So basically, you're working as a progressive grid. You're looking at it for future growth.
Absolutely.
So it's very loose, but
Yes.
you're looking at it to be able to progress as the plant.
That's right, that's right. And if you'll look at your actual designs that you have there, it's a loose grid, and there are, may I see yours? Yeah, so the tubing that is there is available for you to be able to expand the system later. Now remember, when you turn this thing on, it's going to go out 3 to 3.5 feet. So we don't have to be moving things very much. We don't have to be moving things very much. Chances are an emitter that you put in for a neighboring plant could possibly water this plant as well. Because of that wetted pattern that we get, especially in clay soil, it really goes out.
You talk about woody roots?
Woody roots,
Well,
yes.
Is this for every plant does that?
No, it's
I mean,
just-
I don't understand
Okay,
why you need to, I mean, like if you got hydrangeas or something, you know.
if you have a what, I'm sorry?
Hydrangeas.
Hydrangeas, okay.
Hydrangeas.
Most garden plants are woody plants. So most plants are going to fall into this category, that as the plant matures, the roots that are close to its base are not drinking anymore, okay? Most of our plants are that way. The ones that are not are annuals, and you don't need to worry about those anyway. Bulbs are not like that. Grasses are not like that. Grasses have fibrous roots. Palm trees have fibrous roots. Anything that is in that family, grasses, palms, lilies. Most of our ornamental plants are the woody root type. Woody plants. Yes. So then I was talking earlier about a resource where you can find out whether your plants are low, moderate, or high water use plants. And it is called the WUCOLS list, WUCOLS, and it stands for Water Use Classification of Landscape Species.
Could you repeat that?
It's in your irrigation resources handout. There is a handout that says Irrigation Resources Information Sources, I believe, and WUCOLS is near the top, WUCOLS. It's online. You generally can't get a hard copy anymore. I have a hard copy here, and you're welcome to look through it if you'd like. Now, some of you might say, I don't know I don't even know the names of all my plants. Who doesn't know the names of all the plants in their yard? Okay. So what I recommend you do in that case, if you would really like to go this route of low, moderate, and high, is have a plant designer come in, a landscape designer come in. That's in your information sources also. Have a designer come in, pay them for an hour of their time, and find out what the names of all your plants are. They may even be able to tell you this is a low water use, this is a moderate, this is a high. There are many designers that can do exactly that. They can tell you not only the botanical name of the plant, the Latin name, but they can tell you its water use as well. Or you could look it up. And this is the resource that you can look it up on. All right, so we've come to the end of the teaching part in here. These are the tasks that we are going to do today. The plants are not in. So we need to mark the positions of those plants. We need, and I've done, there are two sections to this. I've put flags in to mark the positions of the left-hand section. The right-hand section we're going to do together. We need to put in flags where all the plants are going to be. The remove and cap off sprinklers we're actually not going to do because somebody already did it and I didn't realize that. Okay, the sprinklers have already been removed and capped. So it's less work for us, really. Absolutely. And everything is still dug up. You can see what they did. Yeah, easily. Now okay, well, I'll explain the rest of these. The third thing that we're going to do is we're going to install the Xirri Retrofit kit. And due to a slight error on my part, and sorry I have to say this on TV, when I showed you these two parts earlier, I said there are two strategies for changing from spray to drip. And I said we're going to be employing this strategy. Well, I didn't realize it, but I had asked them to buy these. I didn't ask them to buy these. So this is an error that I made in my calculations. So both of these do the same function. They perform the same function. I actually do not think that I have the fittings for us to install this today. But we can install this. All right, and I will show you, actually, we will not install this today, but I'll show you how to install it when we're outside. This is the one that we're actually going to install. So on number 3 for our tasks, it is, we will be installing some form of this retrofit type of action. Number 4 is that we're going to run all of the tubing, and it's going to be, we call this blank tubing. Blank tubing, polyethylene. It's 1/2-inch drip tubing. We're going to run this, and then this is what will make up all of those squiggly lines that are all over the place. And we'll run these and we'll stake them down. At some places we're going to have to cut it and put in a T so that we can run other places, and we'll do that together. Yes?
Does that get stiffer with age so that it loses its malleability? You know, if you want to move the tubing around.
They say that, I think I've been working with drip for probably 15 or 16 years now, and I haven't really seen it lose its flexibility or malleability. They say that because it's black and it may be treated in some way as well, it really resists the UV, the damage that the sun tends to do to components. It resists that, and we cover it up with mulch. So I think that you keep, and this drip tubing is supposed to last for at least 10 or 12 years. And I think it lasts for a lot longer than that. Yeah. So we're going to be running this blank tubing and staking it down. And then the last task, I had put that on there, the last task as being actually popping the emitters into the tubing. Now, we're not going to do that because I would really like the system to be flexible for them next week when they do it. How many of you are planning to come next week? Oh, yay, wow, a whole bunch of you. That's wonderful. Good, so next week you'll be actually popping the emitters into the tubing. For those of you who will not be there next week, when we come back in, I have a whole bunch of little samples of this, and I have emitters, and you can practice popping the emitters in, okay? We just won't be doing it out there. So the question is, he says that he doesn't have sprinklers that he can convert. So the handout that you have that has these parts on it, if you could have a look at it, the handout, it's green on the top, And it shows both of these. It shows this on the top and this on the bottom. This actually is what he's talking about in the bottom part of that handout. It actually shows you how to cut into your PVC tubing and put this into the PVC tubing. Yeah, the PVC pipes. So you can just go into the system anywhere underground and put this in. Yes. Yes.
If you have one zone that has, let's say, 5 sprinklers
Yes.
attached to it,
Uh-huh.
I want to have 2 of these sprinklers function as a sprinkler, not all of them converted.
Okay.
But the last 3 sprinkler, I want them to convert it to drip system.
Okay.
So if I install this on the 3rd sprinkler from there on, they become the drip. So the
Yes.
first 2 will be left open to be sprinkler, and then the next 3,
Okay.
is that how it works?
Okay. He's asking if he can just convert part of his system to drip. Leave the sprinklers working over here and then convert part to drip. That's something we definitely do not recommend. Okay. The reason being, if you can imagine, these sprinklers that you have going on in the other area, they're putting out water at a really fast rate. So those sprinklers should only be on for maybe 5 minutes, 5 or 6 minutes max. Yeah. So then if you put this drip in over here on the same zone and that wants to be on for 45 minutes, oh boy, then we've got a problem. But there is something that you can do, which I'll talk about later. My mantra is always, don't mix sprinklers and drip, okay? And that includes micro sprays. If you have a drip system and you have these little micro spray sprinklers on it, you really should not be mixing those two because of what I just said. They have a radically different application rate. So if you have to leave it on long enough for your drippers to get the water to the plants, you're leaving this one on way, way too long. And we're all about using our water in the most efficient way. So now there are products out, sprinkler products that are out, that actually apply the water at a rate closer to your drip system. Okay? So if you, in reality, you either because of budget or logistics on your irrigation system cannot put in another zone, another valve. If you can't do that and you have to mix them, there are sprinkler nozzles that you can use that will be closer together in application rate, and you won't be wasting water like you would if you did not use those. And we will cover those when we come back in, if you have to mix the two. Yes, sir.
Can we revisit your landscape plan here, because I'm a little bit, I'd like to clarify. You only have one zone feeding
It's all one zone.
each area?
It's one zone.
And
Yes.
Because according to the design capacity, aren't you looking at the half-inch pipe feeding 4 gallons per minute?
Yes. So he's concerned that we only have one zone out here, one valve, and we have a capacity of 4 gallons a minute, okay? Now, 4 gallons a minute. How many gallons an hour is that?
240.
Right. 4 gallons a minute is what our capacity is. That's what our flow is. This is what you get with half-inch pipe, 4 gallons a minute. We write it GPM. That translates over when we're talking about drip emitters, we say gallons per hour. That translates into 240 gallons per hour. Okay, so if I'm using 0.5 gallons per hour emitters, how many emitters can I put on this system?
400 maybe?
Exactly. So we have the capacity to use 480 emitters. That's a lot of emitters. We have 40 plants, 2 emitters per plant. So today, well actually not today, next Saturday, you will be installing 80 emitters. We can still put we have room to put 400 more. Okay, so as the system grows, we're certainly going to be putting in more emitters as the plants grow. But we've got a lot of headroom here, okay, in this case. And this is something that you do want to look at because there is a speed limit for water in irrigation systems. Hopefully I'll be able to talk about that later, about the speed limit. The reason we have a speed limit is because irrigation valves slam shut. It's not like our kitchen sink that we turn and it opens and closes slowly. Irrigation valves closed. And what happens is, it's like the difference between me walking into that wall and running into that wall. If I run into that wall, either the wall's going to come apart or I'm going to come apart. And this is what happens with irrigation systems, is that they slam shut. If you have violated the speed limit, then eventually your system is going to come apart. And I have personal experience with many irrigation systems that are literally coming apart at the seams because the pressure and flow are too high. Okay? Pressure is directly related to flow. So even though we've only got 30 psi here, we still have a certain flow at 30 psi. That over there will probably allow us at least, how many gallons a minute? Maybe 6 or 8 gallons a minute. This is the speed limit for half-inch pipe, half-inch tubing. That's the speed limit, 4 gallons per minute. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question about that?
Yes.
Sure. So you showed us 3 filters, one at the regulator, one at the sprinkler head, and then this other underground one.
Yes.
Just to make sure I've got this, you only need one.
That's right.
Right, it's not
That's right.
multiple versions of it, just install one somewhere along the line and
Exactly.
we're good to go. Okay.
Yeah, somewhere along the line, making sure that it's upstream of what it's watering. Yeah, yeah. So you only need one of these strategies. And the reason we're putting in 2 today is because there is a, well, technically we could put in 1. Technically we could. I'm much more comfortable putting in 2 because I don't know, I didn't put those pipes underground. And I don't know what is the part that is most upstream. So I can't just dig up this one sprinkler and say, this is the first sprinkler, I'm going to convert it here. I can't say that because that might be the first sprinkler. That's why we're doing both sides and then capping everything else off. But you only need 1.
And one more quick question, just
Yes.
on the flushing.
Mm-hmm.
You just run it for a couple of seconds when you're flushing it? And then
30 seconds to a minute is
Okay.
what they say. That feels excessive to
It feels
me.
like a lot of water, yeah.
But also it depends on the size of your system too. If you're going around a really big backyard, it may take that much time for it to go through the whole thing. Yeah, we'll start on the left-hand side. We have the flags in on the left-hand side. We'll start actually running the tubing on the left-hand side. And because we can't really do anything on the right-hand side until those flags get in. We don't want to be getting in their way. So this is going to be a bit of an organic process outside. I just asked for your patience in that this is the first time we've done this. There are a lot of us, and we'll really, even if we don't get the system so that we can turn it on and watch the water flowing, because we can't do that today. Remember I said we can't pop those emitters in. I would rather not, so that you can do it next week. Even so, you'll see the process. You'll see the flags representing the plants, and you'll see the process of these tubing being run on both sides of every flag. Every flag will have tube on both sides. So this was all grass before, and these were the locations of the sprinklers. So what I asked them was that they leave one sprinkler on each side for us to convert, okay? One sprinkler. They left this one, and there's one over here. So The valves are up there. The retrofit, could you please hand me the sprinkler looking thing? So this is one of the strategies. Oh, and hand me the one that's sitting back there also. Thank you. Yeah. These are the two strategies that we could use if we wanted to in this case. So with this strategy, you can put it anywhere as long as it's, well, actually, this you want to have upstream. You want to have it as close to the valve as possible because this brings down your pressure and filters the water. So if we wanted to, we could put this in that box down there. Right now, one of these is in that box for the drip system up against the firehouse. They already have one, but they don't have anything like this on the sprinkler zone. And so we want to do that for the sprinkler zone. So I've marked the positions of the actual plants. So the flags represent the plants. And we will be doing something like that. And instead of it being a short tube coming out of here, this will be our beginning to then wind around and around and around, and we're going to have a closed loop. We're not just going to send it out and end it. We're going to make a closed loop, and then we'll cut into that and make another closed loop. So everything is connected to everything. We're not just sending straight lines going out or even curved lines going out. We have everything depending on everything else in each system, on this side and then also on that side.
What's the advantage of the closed loop?
The advantage of the closed loop is that we have water sort of traveling around in different directions, whereas if it's just going out there, it doesn't have any help for its pressure. If it's a closed loop, there's help for the pressure. Yeah, it's similar to how electricity has to be a closed circuit. You send one wire out, and they have to connect somewhere, and that's closed circuit, and it makes for the best flow. In the case of electricity, it won't work if you don't do that.
Most even flow?
Pardon?
The most even?
Yes, the most even flow. Now, the water is traveling, when you first turn it on, it might be traveling off that way and off that way and off that way, but once the pipes fill up with water, it's just a full system, charged system, emitting water out of the emitters. Okay, so, excuse me, I got a little tickle. So we don't have the plants marked over on that side. What I'm considering, and let me know if this is okay with you guys, I'm considering just doing this side.
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay, okay, good, good. Excellent, all right. So then we can see the process. I would very much like for somebody to dig up the sprinkler for me then. Yep, we have shovels. Laura, we didn't bring the, whoops, could you please grab that little shovel?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Everything together because it's all
Yeah,
scattered.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the good news is we don't have to wait for him to dig up the sprinkler. We can actually start running the tubing. Yes?
When you cap these off, do you just screw that on? Did you put any
Just-
purple glue?
No glue. When you cap these off,
I've got water in them
when you
Step back just a little bit.
when you cap these off, you really should use Teflon tape underneath the caps. I'm not sure if they use Teflon tape, but you really should, because then it won't leak when the system comes on. You can leave the sprinkler in. If you have Rainbird sprinklers, they sell caps for Rainbird sprinklers. That's the only manufacturer that sells caps for their sprinklers. So you don't, that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that. If you have rainbird sprinklers, you don't have to dig them up and pull them out. All right? Yes.
That is not a rainbird sprinkler, that's why he's digging it out, correct?
That's right. That one's Toro, I think. Yeah.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes.
Do you have to remove your existing lawn, or can you cover it with plastic soil and mulch over it? And have
Yes.
the
Okay.
lawn die?
So she's asking if you want to replace your lawn and put in plants. Do you have to actually pull out the grass? And no, you don't. You can just cover it. In fact, there's a whole process called sheet mulching, where you put cardboard over it and then mulch, and you kill your grass that way, and then you can just plant directly on top of that.
You don't have to put plastic over it?
No plastic. Yeah, no plastic. Please don't put plastic in your gardens, because the soil goes sour underneath the plastic. Soil needs to breathe. It needs oxygen, and it won't get it if you have plastic on top of your soil.
How long before you plant?
You can actually plant the next day. Yeah, because if you just cover it all up with cardboard and then put a really good amount of mulch on top of it, you can put your plant in the mulch. And then the cardboard will break down and the plant's roots will go down into that. Yeah, you can plant in the mulch, or you can cut a hole in the cardboard and plant in there. That's a little more risky, because then the grass wants to come up through that hole. Yeah.
Is that okay?
You got a pipe
Let's see.
coming out here.
Yeah,
You got
so
one black pipe, you got one white pipe, then you got, I don't know if this is a
Okay.
block or a box.
so what we could actually use here is we want access to,
How much of that? Oh, it's on a,
yeah,
it's on
so
an elbow.
it looks like we can just unscrew this. Okay. It looks like we're good, actually.
It's on a little elbow.
We're good. Okay. So that should be good right there. All right, so what they've done is we just have the sprinkler sitting there, and it's screwed in, and it's sitting there horizontally. We're just going to unscrew the sprinkler, take it off, and screw this on. All right, done and done. Would you like to do that since you dug the hole? Okay.
What am I doing?
Take off the sprinkler. You want to clean the threads
Is the water
and...
going? Is the water on?
Oh, no, it's not on.
Would you unscrew this?
Yeah, just unscrew it, and we need some Teflon tape. Could you hand me that bag, please? Let's see if there's Teflon tape in here. So now we've got a connection here that we can screw this onto. We always want to put Teflon tape onto our connections. And
Kind of dirty around there. You got a little rag or something to wipe it off?
yeah, go ahead and wipe it off. And I'll put on the Teflon tape. When you put on Teflon tape on these parts, you want to put it in the direction that the threads go. So you want to do it in this case, if this threaded nipple were my finger, I would be going like this, because that's the direction of the threads. If you do it opposite and you screw something on, the tape just comes off. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just wind this on there. And you only need to go about 3 or 4 turns. Two, 3, and 4. Okay, so then you can go ahead and screw on the retrofit.
Yeah, where does this thing come in from?
And you can actually take this off. We're not going to use that.
That's what I was wondering, if it comes off.
Yeah. Okay, and so she's going to screw on the retrofit now, and making sure we don't get any soil in there. Yeah, that's really important. Yeah, just how about that? And you can face it can we face it up? Oh, that's probably fine. Yeah. Does it feel like it's going on pretty easily now? Okay. So now we've got our retrofit on there. So coming out of this retrofit, we do need a way to go from that to tubing. In this case, they do sell these elbows that you can screw on top of that. I'm not crazy about these. I've had these leak quite a bit. So what I did was I just got some PVC elbow, and it's got threads in it. And this barbed fitting is what we will then put the tubing into, this barbed fitting. So then when this goes on that's when the drip starts, okay? All right.
Tubing fitting.
Yes, and we should put,
The silicone tape on?
yes, put the Teflon tape on that also.
So is that something you can buy, or is it something you made?
It's something you can buy. You're actually putting it on backwards. Put it the other way. Yeah. Other way, other way. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, it's not always clockwise though. That's the tricky thing about it. Especially if you're left-handed, then it's counterclockwise. It's tricky. I was going to actually look at our design and run the tubing exactly as the design is, but really what we need basically, and this is what you'll be doing in your yards, is you want the tubing on both sides of the plant, both sides of every plant. So then the strategy to do that is to first go around the outside, and then we'll work in from there. Okay? So
How tight do you want that? Because otherwise you're going to need a wrench on there.
oh, not
Hold
super
that
tight.
tight.
It's
Okay.
just hand tight.
Okay.
Yeah. And then this does rotate too, so it's probably fine. That's probably fine. So this can be horizontal, it can be vertical, it can be anything really. We just want to be able to get at it so that at another point we can clean this filter that's inside this thing. This is the tool that holds up sprinkler heads. It's this guy here, and you can get it at the box stores, Home Depot or Orchard. And when you pull up a sprinkler head, it holds it up. Okay, these are really great. And then also you can pull them up this way using it as well. You can actually put it in there to pull it up, because usually these guys, this is an extension that I put on this. Your sprinklers usually look like this, and they're hard to pull up. You break your thumbnails pulling them up. You could just use this guy to pull it up also, like that.
And you're not going to damage the little head in there?
No, it doesn't damage it. And then, whoops. And then once it's up, it holds it. And this is how you flush your sprinklers, okay? You want to hold it up so the soil can't run back in there. All right, so this is polyethylene tubing. There are no emitters built in. They also make it with the emitters built in. In this case, because we have sparse plantings, we're putting in blank tubing and we're putting in the emitters ourselves. Now, when you install this, it's a really good idea to do it in the sun, okay? Do it in the sun. It's much more flexible, and you have to unroll it very carefully as you go, okay? Unroll it very carefully as you go. This stuff wants to kink, okay? And kinked tubing means dead plants, okay? Kinked tubing, water cannot get through kinked tubing. So when we install it, we do it very carefully, unrolling it as we go. This is normally a two-person operation. Keep it totally rolled. I'm being really careful about this because I've done this enough that it just kinks, boom, it's kinks, it's done. Okay, so keep it rolled all the way up. And I'm a Virgo. That's my excuse too. I'm a Virgo, so I'm very meticulous about how I do things. All right, so now you walk over here and you plug that in.
job then?
Yes, normally a two-person job. Now, what you can do is just go back and forth, and push in at the same time.
All the way down?
Yes, well, as far as you can.
If you put it in hot water first, would it be easier to go?
Yes, yes.
It will close back up.
Hot water, sometimes I'll put it in my mouth first to make it easier to put it in. Some people get those old percolators, coffee percolator, and just have hot water in, and if you dip it in the hot water, then it's really easy to get the fittings and everything. Okay, so Sean?
Yes.
So what you're going to want to do, oh, and we need staplers, people to staple. As he unrolls, people are going to staple it down, all right? Who wants to staple? Okay, all right. So you have that one, and you take this one. All right, so now remember I said that when those plants go in, they have potting soil right there. These are the containers are this big. And we need to get one emitter on that cushy potting soil, right? So we're gonna, for one of these passes, we're gonna go really close to the flags. All right, on one of these passes. I'm thinking the inside one would be best, because the outside one we want to be more flexible. That's good intuition on your part. We want to be more flexible. So as Sean is unrolling, now you want to go with the outside. First we're going to do an outside circle, and we want to lay it, I would say, about 15 to 18 inches away from the base of the plant. 15 to 18 inches away.
So
And
this is probably about, that's about right there. That would be a good one.
I have a,
Here, I got it.
oh great, okay. And I have,
About 10 inches. How's that?
yeah,
Good marker? You want to use that?
yeah. Something that we really want to make sure that we're doing is making loose lines, loose, so that they can be really flexible. So what we want is sexy curves. Once they get back around to the beginning, we're going to tie it right back in to the beginning and make a closed loop. Make a cut there and put another T in. Put another T in, and we'll head out again in this direction, just inside these guys, to make our second course. You got the idea? Yeah, great. These guys need something on the inside. Wow, this looks great, you guys. If this were to kink, say it did this. A good way to remedy that is to put it back out and put a splint on it. So I would either cut it off, or if you can't cut it off, put a splint on it. There's something rigid that you can tie to it so it won't kink again. We want to put in a couple of flush areas, okay? We talked about flush. So I like to flush pretty far away. Well, I think we'll flush down here by the sidewalk. So if we can just have somebody cut in, let's see. Actually, this is a public area and a lot of people walk up and down the sidewalks. I actually would put the flush a little further in so that if somebody sees it, they don't just undo it and then we have it open. So what I'll do is, it's totally up to you where your flush points are. So I'm just going to put one in, say here. Could somebody please put a T in there? And this is our flushing thing. Let's put in the T, and
So
that's
am I
your.
just running it out this way?
Yes, yeah. And, oh, excuse me, let's get a little part here. This is the most simple way to rig up a flushing system, is that now we have this tube here. I call this a figure 8, and these things are about 3 cents a piece. You slip it on.
Either one?
Yeah, slip it on down about 5 or 6 inches, and then just fold the tube over.
Grip it?
No, yeah, fold the tube over like here. Fold it over and slip the other end into here.
Oh, I see what you're talking
Yeah. No water will come out of that. They do sell caps. If you just, when you go to the store, they help you. They do sell caps that you can put on there and then unscrew the cap. I like to do this. It's really simple.
What is the purpose of this?
You, anytime, well, you want to flush your drip system at least twice a year. At least twice a year, okay? Now these emitters, supposedly they flush as they open, but they do not let out big particles. If anything bigger gets into your tubing, they don't let that out. This will let anything out. So it's recommended that you flush at least twice a year. So we could either flush right there, we could put in as many flush points as we want.
Lori?
Yes.
So, you know, the system that I had got very stiff. What are the chances that that is going to break and then you'll have a leak?
Okay, I never have those break. So I imagine if you jumped on it or if you stepped on it really hard, it might break.
Okay.
But I don't have experience with these things breaking at all. Okay, yes?
So say this is all planned and then you're working in there and you like, you know, put the shovel through
The fittings, please? The bags of fittings? Okay, okay. So she wants to know what happens if you're just gardening in general and you put your shovel through this. What you do is you keep plenty of couplings on hand, all right? So if it gets cut, you put in a coupling. Now, couplings these are called barbed fittings. I really like these because for one thing, they're a lot less expensive than the compression fittings. There are barbed fittings and compression fittings. These go inside the tube, and the compression fittings go outside the tube. You should have couplers, because any time that it breaks, especially if you left the lines nice and loose like we did here, then you just put in a coupling, put it together, flush the system. Never go back, never just assume that no soil got in there. Flush the system, and then you're back up and running again. Yes?
Got a question. Now we've been using half-inch here. Where would you use the quarter-inch then? Because
Okay.
at home I used a lot of quarter-inch.
Okay. He wants to know where to use the 1/4 inch. And he says, I use 1/4 inch at home, but I have problems. That's why I don't use 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch is a problem because there's so many ways that it can get broken off or it can blow off, or I use the 1/4 inch tubing only in pots, only. That's the only time. Is for pots. But say for instance this were planted up and next spring the firemen want to put some annuals in here. You could potentially just take the 1/4 inch tubing, pop it into that line and go over to the annuals with it.
Are there couplings that go from like, that's a 1/4 inch, that's a half-inch to a 1/4 inch? Do they reducing couplings?
There are not reducing couplings, they're just 1/4 inch couplings that you put directly into this tubing. Yeah, just little tiny things that you just poke directly in. Yeah. We've really tackled a very big and complex subject. And what I like to tell people is that One of your handouts is called Irrigation Resources Information Sources. The very first resource on that sheet is me, okay? I like to tell people that once I give a workshop, you're mine and I'm yours. I'm really fine if you would like to email me with your situation and asking for, should I use this part or should I use this person? Can you refer somebody to me in my area? I'm tapped into a huge network of designers, contractors, and a lot of those people know irrigation, all right? So this really was a really ambitious undertaking for us, but at least we got to go out there and really see the nuts and bolts of it, okay? And then you don't really, once you're in your garden and you're running your drip tubing, as you can see, you can be loose about it. You can be loose. There is really no exact to it. And then what you always want to do is once you have the system set up, turn it on for at least 45 minutes and make sure that each of those emitters is working. All right, you really want to make sure of that. Even if you've used the very best emitter out there, every once in a while you get a dud. And you want to know this before you cover it all up with mulch and just assume everything is groovy. Okay, so you want to turn the system on, make sure everything looks good. And then what I would say from there is really just observe your garden, observe your plants. When this is a perfect time of year to change over to drip or enhance your drip system or upgrade or whatever you're going to do. It's the perfect time of year because we're headed into that time that is what they call peak demand. It's when the plants are drinking the most water, would be like the middle of next month, all right? So this is a really good time to actually do it and then just watch your plants. If you live in the place where you're doing your drip system, you have the benefit of seeing these plants all the time. Contractors, they come in, they install it all and they're gone. They don't get the benefit of observing and then tweaking this, tweaking that. You see how your plants are doing, how they're responding. Wilty plants doesn't always mean I need more water, okay? The symptoms of overwatering can be the same as underwatering, all right? If it's a 102-degree day and your plants are wilted and you watered this morning, and you think, wow, this system just really isn't working. They're wilted because they're hot. They're not wilted because they need to be watered again and again and again. All right? And plants that are being overwatered, some plants will say, yeah, bring it on, I love this. And some plants will say, this is too much for me. There's not enough drainage. I'm sitting in water. My feet are wet. My roots can't breathe. There are really this is a very complex subject, but the advantage for you guys is that you get to observe from day to day. How is what I did yesterday with my irrigation system impacting these plants today and the next day and the next day? And so you observe it, you do what you're instructed to do, and then you observe it, okay? And the handouts that I gave you, actually there's a stapled handout. I always call it the outline, even though it doesn't say outline on it. That will actually give you very in-depth information about switching from spray to drip. And you can read it, you can hand it to your gardener, you can hand it to your contractor. If you hand it to somebody and they say, oh, I hate drip, it doesn't work, or it's too much work, or that stuff just is terrible, have them call me, okay? I've been using drip for years, many years, and I've seen it work fantastically. And using drip, because we can address the plants and give the plants the water they need, not just spray water all over the garden and waste the water. We can give the plants they need. And that's how we preserve our water supply well into the future, okay? Drip irrigation is going to allow us to preserve our water supply well into the future. You'll lower your water bills. The plants are going to sing they are going to be so happy that you now know what they need and that's what you're giving them. Instead of just throwing out their whatever the sprinkler feels like throwing out. All right? So we talk about BAWSCA pays me to give these classes because we want to step into this different paradigm of using our water as efficiently as possible. It's well known that our gardens are at least double overwatered. We put twice as much water in our gardens as the plants need, okay? And whether we're talking drought or 60 inches of rainfall in a year, we only have so much capacity to hold that water and then send it to the public, all right? And the population of California is increasing steadily, 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 steadily. We've all got our straws in that cup, and the cups are only so big, all right? And so using our water in our gardens is not considered by the powers that be as being the most beneficial use of our water, okay? So if we get short on water, what's the first thing to go?
Irrigation.
Yeah, you can't water your lawn. You can only water your garden once a week, all right? So they're going to pull it away from our gardens first. So we are asking everybody to get in the mindset of, I'm only using as much water as these plants are asking for. My water bills are lower. My plants are happier. I'm conserving water, all right? So that's the big message. That's the carry-away message. Other than, there's another takeaway message. San Bruno rocks. I think this is San Bruno doing this. This is the first thing I've ever participated in like this. This is really big, what San Bruno decided to do here. It's really big, and it's right smack on the El Camino for everybody to see. Glory, hallelujah. And I think that they're putting in all native plants. At our native plant tour in the East Bay last weekend, I don't know how many people showed up, but last year 5,000 people showed up to that. So the awareness is happening, and it doesn't have to just be native plants. It can be plants that are suited to this climate. Plants that are suited to this climate. Yes, ma'am.
I got a landscaping award years ago, and it was an English garden, which is totally unrealistic. This is a desert state.
Yes.
And I converted it to drought-tolerant California natives. And I came home from work one morning, and there were monarch butterflies, there were bumblebees, there were hummingbirds, there were finches. I mean, this whole yard was just filled with, I mean, when you do drought-tolerant California natives, you get back, you know, the great animals. And it was just like, you know, a little Garden of Eden. It was wonderful.
Oh, that's such a great point. I just got chills from head to toe. That's a really great point. We're doing so much when we're really paying attention to where we're living. If I lived in Costa Rica, I would be planting tropical plants. I live in California. This is a dry state. It's not even semi-tropical. Southern California is semi-tropical, but this is a dry state. So let's really get into, I see it in all of your faces that, you know, you're with me on this. You're feeling me on this. Yes?
When you're done with this little project out front, are you going to have a sign to advertise BAWSCA? I mean, how will people know?
I'm sure they're going to have a sign. Yes.
To encourage people to do it, to let them look at it, to know what was done here?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would be very surprised if they didn't have a sign. Yes.
And they'll have a video, they can put it online.
There we go. Excellent. There we go. So the city of San Bruno people, unfortunately, I think they say that ex-mayor passed away, and so there are some things going on. They would really like us out of here by noon. And so we have a little bit of time. What I would like to do in like the next 10 minutes is I'd like to answer general drip questions. We were not able to go over anywhere near what I would love to have gone over today, but at least you got the gut hands-on thing of that. So yes, sir.
Is drip available for lawns? And then also the parts that we saw today used out there, are those all available at Home Depot, Lowe's, Orchard?
Okay. Yeah, first question, is drip available for lawns? Yes, they call it subsurface drip. I've done a couple of them, and it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary because you're not quite sure it's working until parts of the lawn start dying, or the ones that I did have been fine. I think they've been in for about 6 or 7 years. I haven't gotten any phone calls, and I figure no news is good news. But some people say, yes, go ahead and put drip underneath the lawn, but I really prefer, my mantra and what I recommend to people is drip the plants, spray the lawn. Yeah, it's when you can see it working, because turf grass is very unforgiving. In 1 square foot of turf grass, we have as many as 300 plants. Okay, 300 individual plants. Each of those blades is a plant. Okay? And if you don't have really good coverage, it's really unforgiving. So I'm much more comfortable using sprinklers on lawns and then dripping the plants. And then the second question was...
Are all the parts available like at Home Depot, Lowe's?
Okay. Okay, most of this stuff, well, some form of drip parts are available at Home Depot, Lowe's, the box stores, as we say. What I like to recommend is that you use the professional parts, which you would need to get at a professional irrigation store. And in the information sources, irrigation resources, there is a listing of stores. Now, the store that works the best with homeowners is the Urban Farmer store. The closest one to you guys would be San Francisco. They will sit you down, design your system for you, walk you around, get all the parts, screw them together in the right order. They're awesome. They're really geared to working with homeowners. So I would recommend buying the professional parts, because I've been repairing, designing, installing drip systems for a very long time now. And I find those parts that you buy in the box stores, I find them broken more often than I find them working. You pay less for them, but they break more often, so thus paying more for them. So I recommend buying the professional irrigation parts. Okay, another question? Yes?
If you have different zones, exactly where do you split?
Okay, different zones. That's a really good question. We call those hydrozones when we're talking about efficient irrigation. And a hydrozone is a dedicated zone. So this guy is watering its zone. A dedicated zone with plants that have the same water needs. So in other words, a sunny area would be separate from the shady area. Plants in pots would be separated out. Different types of things. Maybe you have, annuals, an annuals area. And in your stapled together, what I call the outline, it does talk about how we split those up into zones if we can. I like to say if we can, because a lot of people in these classes look at me and say, I've got one valve, baby, that's it. And another valve is not happening anytime soon. Okay? But if you can, the best case scenario is to be able to separate out those plants that have different water needs, whether it be because of sun and shade or because of a windy area as opposed to a not windy area, an area that's south-facing next to a white wall of the house, a really hot area, an area next to pavement, things like that.
So
okay?
Are you splitting it at the faucet and then you need
Yes.
2 of those?
Yes. Yes.
You,
yes. Timer can be anywhere from here. These are electric valves. And he had asked me to show you guys how these things function. And I'm pretty sure we don't have time for that today, because I would like to get the drip questions asked. But if we can get out of this building, I can definitely answer that question. Okay? So I'm happy to do that outside afterwards. Okay?
One other quick.
Yes?
If I have like 4 zones, but I don't know which one is for what,
Yes.
How would I identify which one is going where if I want to?
Okay. Okay. He says he has 4 zones, but he doesn't know how to identify what's where. Sometimes it's not as simple as turning it on, because it could be underground. You don't. Well, I would say turn it on and just go out there and just start poking around. If you turn on each one and mark the area that each one is, say you turn this guy on and 4 sprinklers right there come on. Then mark that area as being this zone. Then turn this one on and go over it.
How do you turn them individually?
Okay, individually turn on. There are 2 ways to turn these anti-siphon valves on. This guy that has the wires coming out of the top, this is called a solenoid. It's the electric part of the valve. On many valves, if you just rotate the solenoid as if you were unscrewing it, that should turn the valve on. And then sometimes there is a little thing that you can turn also. Some valves have 2. We call these bleeds. This is an internal bleed. This is an external bleed, because if I were to open this, water would squirt out, but the valve would come on. And by the way, if you ever turn on a valve manually, so if you do this or you do this, it will not shut off by itself. Okay? You must close it manually if you opened it manually. Very important. It's easy to forget if it's on a drip system and it's covered by mulch and you go out there and you say, I'm going to run this for a couple of hours. And then the next morning you see a lake in the street and you think, oh, I forgot to turn that off. Okay? More questions?
Yeah.
Yes?
Going back to the existing lawns.
Yes.
Do you have any good tips on saving water, especially if you're on a slope, on timing it,
Timing
what is
it.
the proper timing?
Yes. Okay, so sprinklers really, what we do with sprinklers is we call it cycle and soak. Cycle and soak. And what that means is we run it, what you do is turn on your sprinklers and start your watch, your stopwatch. At the moment that you see water starting to run off, you say, oh, that was 5 minutes. It started running off at 5 minutes. So then now you know when you program your controller, you can only run those sprinklers for 5 minutes. So then if you wanted it to run 15 minutes that day, you would run it 3 times for 5 minutes. And by the way, runoff and overspray are now illegal in California. Okay, we have a new landscape ordinance and runoff and overspray are illegal.
How about when the sprinklers
Yes.
go on and it's raining?
They
have some type of
Yeah, well, there are smart controllers for that. There are sensors for that, but you have to buy it separately. Yeah.
How do you
Yes.
adjust the overspray? Because some of these are...
By putting on the correct nozzle, it really takes having somebody come who knows what nozzles are available and what configurations they come in, because they come in all different arcs, all different distances.
Well, some of these manufacturers have adjustable nozzles, right?
Yes, they do. So you can adjust the arc on them. Yes. Yes.
I would think that if after 5 minutes, that's when you started seeing the water running out.
Uh-huh.
That you'd set it for 4 minutes, not 5 minutes.
Well, sure. But that's a good point.
5 minutes, it's oversaturated.
Good point, because that means if it goes for 5 minutes, then it is going to run off. Very good point. If you see it runs off after 5 minutes, set it for 4. Thank you. Yes.
I'm pretty sure I have some buried sprinkler heads in my yard.
Okay.
Buried vanished. Is there a strategy for figuring out where they might be?
Where the sprinklers might be?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know where some of them are, but
Okay.
I'm pretty much convinced there are others hidden away under
Oh my.
dirt and things like that.
Oh my, oh
I mean,
my.
do I have to just find the line and dig?
Yeah, I would call an irrigation repair person, because it could take you a really long time to find that, where an irrigation repair person could probably find it in half or even a third the time that it would take you. Because irrigation people know where to look for these things. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have some good ones to recommend?
Yes, she's asking if I can recommend anybody, and in your information sources resources sheet, There is the California Landscape Contractors Association, which is the CLCA. If you get on their website, you can get a contractor, names of contractors right in your area. So they're telling me I have to, what is it in show business? Wrap it up? This is a wrap? All right. Oh, thank you. Thanks, you guys, and we welcome you back next week. And